Hi, Lynton here, and this is Sketch and Tell. And this is part of my series called Colours of Life, and we are doing the final one, and it's on the colour green. Now, green universally represents nature and growth and new life, and I thought that would be an appropriate one to end this series on, particularly as we've just moved into spring. Now, if you do any kind of art and you're wanting to just improve your skills, whether in a formal way or in an informal way, it's always good now and then to do what we call a still life. A still life is where you find some objects, whether from indoors or outdoors, place them in an interesting position, composition, and then to use your eyes to really pay attention to not only shape and form and texture, but more importantly, light and shade and tones, light and dark. So I thought for green that we might do a still life. If you want to grab your art materials and just come with me on this very short exercise, and we're going to do 3 apples, and being the colour green, they're going to be Granny Smith apples. So first of all, I'm going to just get some blue and do a very quick sketch of these 3 apples. We'll place them together, and you can kind of do any shape you like. Sometimes I like to give them an interesting, not exactly round, but just sort of, sharpen them off a little bit. And we'll place them on a plate. We'll just do the shape of the plate there. Now, being green, let's first of all just block in the apples with that very distinctive Granny Smith green, like a kind of a mid-range green, a lime green. And as I'm doing this, I want to just go off on a bit of a tangent and just talk a little bit about the story of how these apples came to be and why they are called Granny Smith apples. We need to go back to 1838, where there was a woman called Marie Ann Smith, who with a husband and 8 children over in England were recruited to come to that early colony of Sydney, to come because she had a reputation for being a really good fruit grower, an orchardist. And she came with her family. They were given a block of land just outside of the main part of the colony, and they had to do the hard work of clearing and tilling the land and planting the trees. But very soon her skills as an orchardist came to fruit, excuse the pun, and she was able to grow for that colony and teach others how to grow those fruit trees of peaches and apples, different kinds of apples and grapes and nectarines, and that's kind of where it started. But before we continue, let's just block in the plate. Keeping in with the theme of green, I'm going to just do a light green for the plate. I'll just quickly block that in. Now, as the story goes, she had been down to the local market and bought some crab apples. Some, I think, French crab apples. They're little apples, very tart, but they're good for baking in a pie. And the apple cores, when she had finished, she threw them out into a rubbish tip that she had in her backyard. And before we move on with the story, let's just now think a little bit about the light and the shade. Imagine there's some light coming down from above. It's going to touch the top sides of these apples. So this is where I use a lighter colour. You can go for a lighter green if you have one, but I'm going to, because with pastel you can blend in the colours, I'm going to just start to blend in some yellow. Just let it mix in with the green that's already there. So we'll just start to put some of that on. And again, I'm just imagining that light just touching the tops of these apples and the edges as I put that lighter colour on. So as she threw that fruit out, after a while, she noticed that a little seedling was starting to emerge out of that rubbish tip. And I just love that image of something coming out of something that's being thrown away. And because of her skills as an orchardist, she noticed that the the seedling was a little bit different than your normal apple tree, and so she took it, she nurtured that little plant and cultivated it, which took, again, great skills. And eventually when it bore fruit, I'll just put some yellow here, I'll put a little bit of yellow over here. When it bore fruit, the fruit was very different than your normal apples that were around. They were large, they were green, this green colour, and they were delicious, beautiful, sweet, but also kind of bitter taste. And she was able to cultivate and propagate that first plant and grow a whole lot more. But there's more to the story. But let's think about the shade. On the opposite side, I'm going to use a darker colour. Again, you can go for a darker green, but I'm going to go for a blue and mix it in again with the green that's already there. So I'm imagining on the back side of these apples, the light is not going to be as strong, so we'll just define some of those edges and bottom and side with this blue, and I will continue. And also within the apple, we'll put a little bit of blue where the core or the stem is going to come out of the apple. As she became known for those apples, and they were also really good because you could they lasted a long time, and you could transport them to different parts of the colony without them going off. But they called them Granny Smith apples because of something else that she was known for. I'm going to just get a little bit of, we'll put a little bit of blue down here for the shadow of the apples on the plate. So I'll just put this down here. She was known, along with her skills as an orchard, she was known for her character, her compassion in particular, because in Sydney at the time there were lots of orphans, street kids, urchins who just lived on the streets, and she took great compassion for them, and she would often be seen taking baskets of baked pies or bread or fruit, different kinds of things down to help these children on the streets. And she was affectionately called Granny Smith for what she did. And so when they named these apples, they called them Granny Smith apples, not Marie Smith apples, but Granny Smith apples, because of her character and her compassion for those kids. Now really, that's just a very quick drawing of those apples as a still life, but it allows me now to just think a little bit more about this metaphor of fruit as a way to talk about something else that needs to be growing in our lives, and that is our character. Long after we go, can I say, from this planet, people will remember you not for so much how much you accumulated or what car you drove or what house you lived in. They will remember you by your character, for good or for bad. So it's interesting that this metaphor is picked up in the Bible, in a book called Galatians, and it actually talks about the character, the flavours that need to be part of a person of worth or value, and they are what we call characteristics of joy and peace and love and kindness and gentleness and goodness and faithfulness and self-control. And I was just reflecting on these characteristics in a fun way as I looked at the fruit. And I was thinking, first of all, that our outward appearance can often hide what is within, what your character is. Because often our association with fruit is not growing it in on trees as an orchard like Marie Smith did, but we go to the shop, to the supermarket, and we see them neatly stacked. And we need to understand that the fruit that is there has been chosen for its looks. So if any fruit has any blemishes in the skin, if any fruit is not the right size, they will discard those, and they'll only have the fruit that looks good placed in a very neat position and they often will spray it with a bit of water to make it kind of glisten. Sometimes they wax it, although they don't do that as much today. But they do that to attract you to that fruit so you will buy it. And for me, that is so symbolic of, I guess, the way we live our lives. We place so much importance on the outward appearance, what clothes we're wearing, what we look like, how we appear to others. Those are the things that we think are going to attract people to us, and they often do. But it can hide often your real character. And how many of us know someone who we are attracted to, who have looked up to, whether it's in the sporting world or in the arts world, or whether it's just someone at the school or at our workplace. And when we've got to work with them or see them up closer or work with them or be with them, sadly, sometimes, not always, but sometimes we find that their character is revealed and it's not attractive at all. They can be rude. They can be a bruised person, just like if you have fruit at home that you have bought from the shop that looks good. Sometimes you take that bite and it is bitter, it is bruised, it is woody, might even have worms in it. Looks good on the outside, but inside, not so good. And that is like sometimes the people that we meet, and they can be selfish and rude and angry and a whole lot of other things that do with their character. It doesn't match what they look like. The other thing I thought about, and I just need to just quickly do a little bit of work here on the plate. Just do this around here. And that is that often the real character of who we are, the only shines, I was going to say the taste of who you really are, only shines and is experienced when it's tested. And also your character really only grows when it's tested. Let me give an example here. I have excuse me. My apple tried to run away because it knows what's going to happen. I have here an instrument of torture. It looks like an ancient medieval implement of extreme pain. And if you were an apple, this is exactly what it is. It's a very clever piece of engineering. So I'll just wind it out a little bit more, because when we skewer it, we'll just put it on like so. And then we start to wind it. It does three things. It will start to skin the apple. It will also, you need to have it bedded down onto the table, but I'll try and do it this way. It will also slice the apple, and it will decore the apple all in one go. But here we go. When we now take it off, it's decored. So we'll put my machine over there, and we have the apple that we can now taste. Beautiful. Would you like a piece? I'll put it over here. And as I was thinking about this, I was thinking, again, our real character often is only revealed when it's put to the test. Let me explain. You see, it's easy, in a sense, to love someone who is lovable and likable if they like you back and they're nice to you. But what about if they cut you and they bruise you and they crush you and they hurt you? How is our character then? How do we love that kind of person? It's easy to be happy when you're in a happy place. It's easy to be peaceful when you're in a peaceful place. But what if you cannot go to that happy place of yours? If things aren't going well for you and it's chaotic around you, and things are out of control, how do we find that we can be really peaceful and joyful in those situations? And self-control. It's okay when people are watching us, there's kind of a peer pressure to do the right thing, but what about when you're on your own? Especially if there's a temptation there. How is our self-control then? when we think we can maybe get away with it, without others seeing. You see, it's only when you're, if I can use the analogy of the fruit, sliced and cut and put under pressure and baked, that the real flavour comes out and you taste the fruit for what it is. It's not meant to just sit in a bowl or on a plate and to look good. It's meant to be tasted. And those around us will see what kind of person we are when the pressure is on. But you might be saying, well, that's so hard. There are people I just genuinely don't like. I find it really hard to be peaceful all the time. I find it hard to exercise self-control. And I know that. I struggle with that too. But I want to do one more picture. I hope you can see a little bit of what I'm trying to create here as an image, looking under the ground at this fruit tree. It's interesting that in the Bible, where it talks about our character being like fruit, it also describes it as fruit of the Spirit. And that's because on our own, it's almost impossible. In fact, it is impossible if we try to will this fruit into being, to really be loving towards someone who's hurt us, to really be joyful and peaceful in difficult circumstances. I just can't do it on my own. I need to be connected to the source from where that kind of character flows. Fruit of the Spirit is pointing to a source of a very unique life. Just like this tree I'm trying to represent, the fruit needs to be connected to the tree to grow to its full potential. If you take it off too early, it will not continue to grow. It needs to be connected to the branches, to the trunk, to the root system, so it can draw its nutrients up and through the tree into the branches to the fruit. That's where it gets its life. And in the same way, we need to be connected to Christ, to that living life of Christ, to life with a capital L, to God, whatever name you want to give it. But that life flows from that source, in and through you, and out to others. And what's required is a willingness to be open from our heart, a genuine willingness to be attached, to be connected to that source. And we do that in different ways, but it begins in the heart. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's a growing process. But you know that it's not just coming from your self-will, it's coming from a different place. And that is where the fruit really is found. So thank you for listening, and may you have a fruitful day and a colourful day. Thank you.